So, let's talk about you. That's why everybody came. Enough about the big picture. Now let's talk specifically about the pension plan and how it relates to each and every person in this room. I'm going to talk about service, which is the first component of the formula that determines your plan. I'm going to talk about qualifying, allowable, and pensionable service. I'm going to talk about pensionable earnings, what goes into making up the earnings that comprise your pension formula. I'm going to talk about something called the YMPE. How many people in this room have heard of the YMPE or know what it is? Okay, typically I see a few hands, not very many. One of the more important concepts you're going to learn today, I'm going to talk about normal retirement, early retirement, disability retirement, survivor benefits, what does your spouse get in the event of your death, something called a higher to 65 option, I bet you can guess what it is, and I'm going to talk about termination benefits. What happens if you leave the plan before you have a retirement milestone? For my curiosity, how many people here are ex-Canadian Airlines? Okay, and everybody else obviously is original Air Canada. How many people are from technical operations here? Anybody? 1, 2, 2 or 3? Okay. Everybody else obviously is from airports and cargo. How many people here are less than age 55? Oh, cow, young crowd. How many people here have less than 25 years or less than 80 points? Oh, really junior group. This is what happens for you people if you decide to leave the pension plan tomorrow afternoon. So in terms of service, for everybody who didn't put their hand up, it was original Air Canada, it was a condition of employment. From your date of hire, you were automatically in the pension plan, no ifs, no ands, no buts. That was a good thing. You might not have thought it at the time. You might not think it now. Well, I guarantee you it's a good thing. And if you don't believe me, ask anybody who's ex-Canadian Airlines. And particularly ask the 20% of the people at Canadian Airlines who were not in the pension plan until 2001, and next month will have 17 years of service in the pension plan, despite a lot of them having 30, 35, 40 years of service with the company. They will tell you they wish that they had been forced in the plan. If you had previously worked at Air Canada, maybe university, summer job, slinging bags, went, graduated, got a real job out there somewhere, then suffered some kind of head trauma and decided your future lay back at Air Canada and you rejoined the company. When you came back, you had the ability to buy back your previous Air Canada service. If you came to Air Canada from the Canadian military, you had the ability to purchase your military service and add it to your Air Canada pension. If you have been or continue to be a member of the military reserve or militia, and you have been or go on active deployment as an employee of Air Canada, you can purchase back your pensionable service for those periods leaves of absence. If you have been on maternity leave or paternity leave or any other government-approved leave for which employment insurance is payable. And this list has been greatly expanded in the last couple of years to a number of compassionate care and child care leaves for which you can all get employment insurance. Any and all of those leaves, you can apply to buy back your pensionable service when you return to work, within 90 days of coming back to work. If you have a period of interrupted service for elected office, Jamie Kleinstuber, for example, Keith Aiken, anybody who's elected either a public office or within the union, should they return to Air Canada, have the ability to purchase back that pensionable time. If you have been during your career on any kind of an approved layoff, leave of absence rather, or furlough avoidance, DPLPs, SVLOAs, those programs all came with the ability to maintain your pension at 100%. If you took those options and made those contributions, that is all pensionable service. All full months on GDIP or WCB are fully covered. You make no contributions. Your pension benefit is paid for by the pension plan. You also are accredited with the maximum 2% benefit rate on all full months in GDIP or WCB. And you'll understand the 2% a little bit better when I tell you how your pension is calculated. That's the maximum benefit that the plan pays out. And the reason you're credited with the maximum benefit is when you're on GDIP or WCB, you are not contributing to the Canada Pension Plan, therefore you are not earning credit and service in the Canada Pension Plan, and it will affect your Canada Pension Plan amount. So therefore you get the maximum Air Canada pension because you're impacting on your Canada Pension Plan. So, no contributions, and you can retire directly from WCB or GDIP. And you probably know a number of people who went off on GDIP, long-term disability, and then ultimately retired. You do not have to return to active status. You can retire when you're on GDIP, you can retire on LTD, you can retire when you're laid off. You can submit to retire at any time. So the first type of service I'm going to talk about is qualifying service. Qualifying service is a measure of how long you have been a member of the pension plan. From the date you join the pension plan till the date you retire or you terminate. The significance of qualifying service is this is the service that is used to determine when you have your 25 years, when you have your 80 points. Therefore, qualifying service determines your eligibility to retire, and qualifying service determines the options under which you can choose to retire. The options that are available to you are based upon your age and service. Allowable service is the same, only different. Allowable service is a measure of how many months you actually contributed to the pension plan or are credited with contributing to the pension plan. And I say credited with because, of course, if you're on GDIP, you're not making any payments. However, you're credited with having made those payments and credited with the service. For anybody who was hired as full-time and always been full-time at Air Canada, your qualifying service and allowable service should be the same. Everything to do with pensions is done in whole months. If you work one day in a calendar month, you are credited with the entire calendar month as pensionable service. So this comes to your point about a 2-week strike, right? If you work one day in the month before or after the strike, you're credited with the entire month. The difference for both qualifying service and allowable service. For anybody in this room who has been part-time at any time in your career, when you are classified as part-time, your allowable service is prorated based on the number of hours you work in each month. So the 1 hour in one day in a month thing always works for qualifying, works for allowable for full-time people, but allowable service, which determines the money, for part-time people is based on the hours you actually work for every month you're classified as part-time. If you work an equivalent of full-time hours, you get the full month. If you work half the hours, you get half the month, three quarters a month, etc. So if you've been part-time during your career, you will notice a difference between your qualifying and allowable. You get the full month of qualifying. Your allowable is based on how many hours you work in months that you were classified as part-time. And as soon as you become full-time or are full-time, these are in lockstep. Pensionable service is a Canadian Airlines term. You will not see it on any documents from Air Canada. I put it in here if you happen to have any of your annual pension statements lying around from Canadian Airlines days, or if you're having trouble sleeping and you're reading Appendix A of the pension plan text, you will see references to pensionable service. Pensionable service means both qualifying and allowable for Canadian Airlines. They didn't differentiate. They had one term, one usage. Service cannot exceed 35 years. Very key point. Maximum service permitted by law, Pension Benefit Standards Act, the Income Tax Act, 35 years in any registered pension plan in Canada. Therefore, as you might expect, our pension plan is the same. As soon as you have 420 months of service, you are now fully paid up. You will stop making contributions. Is there anybody in this room that has more than 35 years in the pension plan? We had a couple of guys this morning. Nobody here? Anybody, if you continue to work past 35 years, right, and month number 421, you will notice that you're no longer making any pension contributions, and you will not make any for the rest of the time you work with Air Canada. So, we've talked about service, maximum 35 years. Qualifying service determines when you're eligible. Allowable service determines how much money. Your allowable service must be multiplied by something, and it's something it must be multiplied by is your annual pensionable earnings. Your annual pensionable earnings are essentially any remuneration you get as a result of the collective agreement. Wages, upgrades, shift premiums, skills premiums, anything that results as any clause or article of the collective agreement shows up on your paycheck is considered pensionable earnings. What is not considered pensionable earnings are extraordinary one-time payments outside of the collective agreement, i.e. profit sharing. While it's good for your wallet, has zero impact on your pension plan. Overtime earnings are automatically included at your date of joining. However, you had the option and continue to have the option to contact the company at any time and say, I do not wish to make contributions on my overtime, at which point, of course, they will stop taking contributions on any overtime that you work, and that money obviously will not be included in the calculation of your pension. Your annual pensionable earnings, what they use is something called the average annual compensation, the AAC. The average annual compensation is actually a rolling 36 consecutive month window at any time in your career that will give you the highest 12-month average. The computer program automatically figures out from the date you're hired to the date you retire or terminate which 36 consecutive months gives you the highest 12-month average. And that is what they will use to multiply by your allowable service to determine the dollar value of your pension. This is for Air Canada type service. So everybody who's original Air Canada, for everybody who's CAL on any pension service after December 2001. For anybody original Canadian Airlines, when they calculate your pension on your service 2001 and previous, they will use something called the final average earnings. Again, same thing, only different. The final average earnings can be one of two things. It is either your best 3 consecutive calendar years, or it is the last 36 months that you work, whichever is the highest. Again, on a 12-month average. That is what they will use. For the average annual compensation, there's a maximum annual cap of $82,000 per calendar year. In a calendar year, as soon as you attain $82,000, you will stop making contributions to the pension plan until January 1st the following year, and you will start again. For Canadian Airlines service, there is no pension cap. However, there is a benefit cap, which is $1,143 per year of service. And what that means is, for simplicity's sake, let's say I joined Canadian Airlines in December 1991, and in December of 2001, when I transitioned to the Air Canada style benefits, I had exactly 10 years of Canadian Airlines service. Regardless of how much money I made, the maximum pension benefit that I could be paid for those 10 years, $11,430. 1143 times 10 years. So in reality, what that means is if you've earned $73,900 in 2018 or above, you've made the maximum 1143 for Canadian Airlines service. If you made less than this, you'll get some lesser dollar value. If you've made more than that, you'll still only get the 1143. The 36 consecutive month period that they use for both your Canadian Airlines and your Air Canada service, if you have both or just your Air Canada, if you're original Air Canada, is shown on the calculation details page of the pension projector. Is there anybody in here that has not done an analyzed pension projection? Everybody's done a pension projection? Has everybody done the calculation details page? Or does everybody just go to the first page with the green graph that tells you how much money you get per year? Everybody's gotten calculation details, or have I lost people here?
That's the one with monthly or yearly.
Well, there's actually 3 pages, and I'll show you in a little bit. So when you go in first, it shows you an annual amount with the green graph. Then you can select pension forms of payment, which breaks down how much you get each month on a level life higher to 65, 50%, 60%. And then you have a third window, which is calculation details. It shows you the data. How old you are, when you joined the plan, when you were born, how much qualifying service, how much allowable service, what your average annual compensation, what 36-month period, what YMPE, etc. So I'll talk about that when I get there, but just so you know, this information is there. YMPE, years maximum pensionable earnings. This is a figure that is set every year by Revenue Canada. It is the average industrial wage in Canada based upon the previous year's income tax returns. To which you say, so what? So the YMPE is important to everybody in this room for three reasons. First of all, the YMPE is used to determine how much money you will pay into the Canada Pension Plan. You will pay 4.95% of your income, and Air Canada will match 4.95% until you have earned the YMPE value in any given calendar year. For 2018, that is $55,900. So anybody who's sitting in this room and has earned more than $55,900, you are no longer making CPP contributions. And you will not make any more until January 1st. The same is true for employment insurance. You will pay EI premiums until you hit the 55.9 this year, and then you will stop and it will restart again in January, and you will pay in 2019 on whatever the 2019 YMPE is going to be. I haven't looked it up yet. The third and most important reason for everybody in this room is the YMPE plays a prominent factor in the benefit formula of our pension plans. Simply put, you earn a lower pension benefit from Air Canada on earnings up to the YMPE and the maximum 2% above. So as the YMPE increases, your Air Canada pension actually decreases for any given dollar value. If your wages are not also increasing, your pension erodes and decreases because you get more calculated at a lower percentage and less calculated at the max 2%. And I'll show you some examples of that. Key point here, the YMPE is tied to the same 36-month period in which you earn your best 36 months earnings for Air Canada type service. For Canadian airline service, it is always the last 36 months you work regardless of when you earn your best earnings. The YMPE, the 36-month period that they use again, is also shown on the calculation details page. This is the YMPE 1970 up to 2018. 55.9 this year, 2017, 55.3, so a $600 increase. 17 to 16 was a $400 increase, smallest in history. And the smallest in history because this increase in 17 was based on the 16 income tax returns, which actually was the 2015 taxation year. And I don't need to tell anybody from Alberta what happened in this province in 2015. As we would say in Newfoundland, the arse fell out of her. And all the Newfoundlanders went home because there was no work for them here anymore. And this is the magnitude that the Alberta economy has on the Canadian national economy. That when this province went out in 2015, the average industrial wage in Canada had its smallest year-over-year increase in that year, $400. If you go back to the year before, $1,100, $1,400, $1,000, right? Some pretty, $1,800 here, some very significant jump ups. On average, 3.36% a year. 2003, $39,900. Skill testing question. Who can tell me what happened at Air Canada in April of 2003? Fairly significant event.
Was that a bankruptcy?
We filed for bankruptcy. And we went into concessionary bargaining. We took wage freezes for 10 years. And we didn't get another wage increase until 2012, $50,100. So over the 10 years that our wages were frozen, this YMPE increased $10,200, and we had no corresponding increase in our salaries. That meant that while everybody's pension was going up, because we were all adding service, we all had less than 35 years, there was this slow diminishing erosion of your pension that you didn't even notice. Because $10,200 more of your pension was calculated at 1.75% or 1.4% versus 2%. And what that means is that 1 month of pension service in 2003 might have meant, say, $10 to your final annual pension. By the time you get to 2012, that same month might only mean $7. So yeah, it's an increase, but it's a smaller increase. So I've told you that your pensionable service is capped at 35 years. I've also told you that your best 36 months average annual compensation can be any time in your career. That includes after you have attained 35 years of service. You're not making contributions to the plan, but the plan says we can still use your earnings after. And you probably all work with people that have more than 35 years, and that's probably why they're still working. However, you need to be hyper vigilant if you're working after 35 years, because your salary can increase, and if it doesn't increase enough to outpace the increase in the YMPE, you can actually cause your pension to decrease. And I'll show you an example of that when I show you how your pension is calculated. So as long as you're accruing service, your pension generally goes up. Every month of service means a higher pension. But once you get 35 years, the only way to impact your pension is through increasing your salary, and you better make sure you increase it enough to outpace any increase in the YMPE.